Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to go ahead and go through my top 10 loadouts for Season 3 mid-season update, or whatever you want to call it, after the AMAX Nerf, which was nerfed pretty good, by the way. It's still very viable, and I still think it's probably one of the best long-range weapons, but it's not the only long-range weapon. So we'll kind of break down what loadouts I recommend currently right now, and then I'll go ahead and kind of give you some ideas of what other things you should experiment with if you want to try something a little bit off meta, but then still competes. If you enjoyed the video, learned something new, please do me a favor, hit the like button. Goal on today's video is 12,000 likes, so hopefully you guys can destroy that number. If you're brand new, looking to find your way back for more Call of Duty content, just double check, make sure you subscribe with notifications on. We're going to start off with my number 10 loadout, which is always my experimental loadout. This is kind of where I just kind of mix and match and try different things. For this, what I got going on right now is the SA87, a little bit odd. If you want something to mix it up, definitely try it out. We got the monolithic suppressor. You don't use a barrel because it's an LMG. It has really good bullet velocity. It's actually surprisingly good. You can use this with a Ranger, 60 round mag, tac lasers to help speed up the ADS, and then the 3X optic. You could put on a barrel, but it'll be way too slow. Guarantee you, this is probably as good as it gets with the SA87. Then I have the PPSH, which kind of made a resurgence. You could also swap this out with like the AK-74U, which we'll talk a little bit later on. But we have the GRU suppressor, Task Force, Spetsnaz grip, and the Spetsnaz grip is for vertical, horizontal. It's like the field agent grip. 55 round drum. If you want bigger one, you can always go a little bit larger with the 71, but then you might want to put on the rear grip because it ends up being a little bit slow. And then I swap out the Spetsnaz grip for a serpent wrap, and that's kind of how it goes. Raider stock for the mobility, even though it got nerfed, SMGs still kind of need that because that's the huge advantage with having SMGs, considering the range drop-offs aren't as good as rifles. So that's kind of the big change they made with that update. For perks, EOD, because generally that's going to save your life. You could use double time if you want to crouch a little bit faster. Other random perks, go for it. If you want to use cold-blooded, that's on you. And then we got overkill as that loadout. You know, obviously if you want to always grab a ghost loadout first, you would build these class setups completely different and kind of go with the weapon that's a little bit more well-rounded, whereas right now you're just grabbing your full loadout. And then typically, since you're gridding two primary weapons, you're going to go with amp just for that faster weapon swap speed. It throws stuff a little bit faster, and then if you happen to, you know, swap launcher, reload faster, that as well. And then I use a Semtex. Typically, I know thermites are pretty popular. C4s still kind of coming back into the mix, and then a heartbeat sensor, just because that is the most powerful tactical piece of equipment in the game besides a stun, because the stun's inconsistent on controller players compared to keyboard and mouse. And right here I have a restock and a ghost class with the two different snipers. So essentially these classes, they can swap. It doesn't really matter. These are specific for my second loadout. So I've already gone and grabbed one of my primary loadouts, which is overkill. Then when the free loadout comes, I go grab, and if I'm going to grab restock, I have this. And this one already has a Semtex, for example, so all my overkill have a Semtex. So if I wanted a Claymore, I can go ahead and get a Claymore, I can get stuns, and that gives me at least a variety there. And this is a Kar98, pretty much same class setup. There's a lot of good class setups with this. Mono, single arms, tac laser, sniper, scope, and then the precision comb, the sport comb. You can use stipple grip, you could use focus. You could do presence of mind. There's a lot of good options on that. It's just a matter of preference. And then I have the Psycob. You could actually run like this without this right here. Get rid of that and maybe put fully loaded. So when you grab this one, you'll get a sniper, and then the SMG ammo will be fully loaded if you're going to be running an SMG, which has kind of made it back into the fold. If not, I would just use this one for better aim down sight speed. Monolithic, 140 millimeter auto, tac laser, 80 round drum. These still compete very good as a primary. So if you're coming back from the gulag, these could be a pretty good option. If you're stacking them with a rifle, a true rifle, you can go ahead and go that route if you only want a ghost loadout for some of these primary weapons that are a little bit more for medium to long range. Same exact thing here, but we got ghost swapping it out. And then this one's a little bit more of a long range sniper, so I have that option there. Monolithic, HDR Pro, tac laser, variable zoom scope, FTAC, Stalker, Scout. And this one's something that people typically will ask. I usually use this reticle here, which is the cover shot reticle. And just because it's nice, clean, it's probably the best one in the game, at least in my opinion. There's like 2 or 3 that are like near the top of it, but that's kind of how it goes. Then you have 2 of your rifle bailout classes, and these pretty much have been my bailout classes for a long time because the Growl is one of the best guns versatility wise in terms of having decent ADS, low recoil, good iron sights, does good damage, can sacrifice an attachment so you can run fully loaded. And as you can see, these are already built for fully loaded. So if I grab these late game, fifth zone, I'm coming back, I need a weapon, this weapon will perform fairly well. It won't have as much stability or ADS speed without the tac laser, but fully loaded allows me to have enough ammo to take on a couple different engagements, and that's kind of why I have it built that way. Monolithic, Archangel, Commando, 60 round mag, and then fully loaded. And then if I'm running a primary weapon, which typically is going to be a rifle, it gets fully loaded, and then I pick up my weapon and I'll keep the fully loaded because I'll get the ammo. So if I'm short on ammo, I'll be fully stocked up. And that's kind of how these two work. Pretty much the exact same thing, but I swap out go. So then we get into the actual loadouts, which I think there's a lot of like good options right now. Like as far as close range, there's like 6 or 7 different options you can use. We'll go kind of over some of the other options, but a cool option right now, I'm not particularly a huge fan of the Stoner. I just don't like the way it feels, but a lot of people are loving it, and it is definitely competitive TTK wise. The recoil's a little bit wonky at times, but agency suppressor, task force, field agent grip, fast mags, and then the Axle 3X. One thing that I've seen a lot of people do is they're running the match grade because it increases effective damage range. But the problem with this gun is if you do not run the task force, your bullet velocity is like 700, which is not good with just the agency suppressor. So you got to have more bullet velocity, but unfortunately this actually adds to the recoil. And then if you field agent grip, it only helps so much. Axle 3X, it's kind of one of those things that you either like it or you don't, but it's at least worth trying because it is a very powerful weapon. Okay, secondary. A lot of the secondaries we're going to be talking about here, if they're SMGs, you can just mix and match anywhere you want because they're all pretty good. We have the agency suppressor, task force, this Cold War MP5, Raider stock, along with the 50 round drum mag and the field agent grip. If you want a little bit faster reload, you can go with this one, but it will penalize your ADS speed slightly, which is kind of always the penalty. It just really depends. You can get rid of the field agent and then put on Serpent. Keeping in mind that the recoil might be a little bit hard for some people, especially if you remove that field agent grip. Then it brings us to the FARA, which is a little bit more unconventional for a lot of people. I don't think people have given it a true shot, but I'm telling you, it kills faster than the Krig, just a little bit harder to use. But with the recoil changes they made, the damage profile, it's still pretty good. It didn't get like nerfed into the dirt or anything like that. It's still a pretty solid weapon. Definitely worth trying. Grew suppressor, Liberator, and a lot of people ask, well, why the Liberator? Because what's going to happen with this gun is you're normally going to challenge people beyond its damage drop off. So if you end up going like the effective damage range or one of these other ones that's going to hurt your recoil or whatever, then you end up with scenarios where you're pushing out the effective damage range, but you're not really going to challenge people within those ranges, so you're not really gaining the benefit. So you want to go all bullet velocity because you're going to be using this thing for range. That's not going to impact your recoil, so it's going to be a little bit easier to use. Spetsnaz grip, horizontal, vertical, it's like a field agent. And then the 50 round, which actually becomes a 60 round. It does have a little bit slower reload, but that's kind of the penalty of the gun, but it does decent enough damage that it performs really well at range. And then the SUSAT multi-zoom. If you're not a fan of the SUSAT because it's a little bit slower or maybe just don't like the way it looks, the 3X is perfectly fine. You can swap it out. I think this one, it ends up looking like it has no recoil with the SUSAT. So that's definitely the way I would go. When it comes to the LC10, you're pretty much going to build it like a lot of the other SMGs. You can kind of mix and match different things. I feel like it's super low recoil, similar to what we saw with the PPSH. But even with the task force, I feel like it's really manageable. So instead of having that underbarrel, I'm putting on the Serpent Wrap. So we got agency suppressor, task force, 55 round, Serpent Wrap, and then the Raider stock for the strafe speed. And that's pretty much how that one's built out. Then that brings us to number 3. And this is one where you're really going to be able to mix and match a ton of weapons. This would be my sniper support class setup. I'm running the Kar98 as a sniper, and then you can put a bunch of different weapons in this particular slot. You can do the FARA, still as an SMG type build. You can do the FFAR. You can do the AK-47. You can do the RAM. You can do you can do a lot of good weapons that are more rifles that kind of get you a little bit more range than an SMG, where you're still going to be decent up to about like 40, 50, 60 meters. You're going to be good from 0. It's going to be a little bit slower because that's kind of like the trade-off. You're defining clear class roles, and that's kind of what's happening with this change. It's kind of opened that up by nerfing the mobility on a lot of the Cold War options. It's kind of brought things back in line where a rifle is still a rifle, and SMG is an SMG, sniper is a sniper. And then you use them according to how you want to use them, either at range or sniper support, which is typically a little bit better up close, and maybe not necessarily doesn't need to be a laser beam at range because you have a sniper rifle. So the RAM, there's going to be a one little attachment you could trade out since this is going to be used for sniper support. Monolithic, Ranger, tac laser, 50 round, and the commando. Some people like, oh, I want to be a little bit faster. You can get rid of Ranger and put on Eclipse. You're not going to get as much recoil reduction, but it will speed up your ADS speed just enough where it feels a little bit faster. Just keep in mind the recoil difference will be there. The difference in actual range and bullet velocity isn't all that significant. The biggest difference is aim down sight speed and recoil. It's the trade-off. Slower for better recoil control or faster for less recoil control. So you pick what works best for you. Feel out the gun. If it feels like it's kicking too much, you can't really control it, probably need the Ranger. Just keep in mind, if you get pushed, you're going to be a little bit slower when you ADS. Then we have the Kar98. Same build, Sport Tech, Sport Comb, or Precision, or Stippled, or whatever else. You know, there's a lot of good. Sleight of hand's another good one too. I didn't even mention that one, but you could definitely throw that in there now that the sleight of hand is working on all the Modern Warfare weapons. Then that's going to bring us to the Krig Bullfrog. So the Krig, again, it got that huge buff a while ago, which made it a little bit more usable. It ends up following the same model of all the Cold War weapons if you're going to be using them for range. Agency Suppressor, the Ranger, which gives you the bullet velocity. So whichever one's giving you bullet velocity, because in this particular case, like having an extra 5 meters to your range is not really going to help you. The bullet velocity does more at making your gun feel like hit scan. Field Agent Grip, 60 round mag, and then the SUSAT multi-zoom or the 3X, again, comes down to preference and what you feel like ADS speed. SMGs, Bullfrog is still good. Obviously, there was a little bit of mix-up right at the update with a little bit of confusion of the damage profiles of what the devs were saying, what was tested, what True Game Data put out. There was a little bit of confusion there. This ends up still being about as good as it was before. It's just not as OP for those headshots, right? You got to get 2 headshots instead of 1. Keeping in mind that if you were going to run solos, there's a lot more viable builds than we're talking about. Maybe you wouldn't have ammunition. Maybe you'd run an AS Val. This is more kind of like in the middle there where you can run this in trios, quads, duos. You could run a lot of these builds in solos. Biggest difference is maybe you can get rid of the ammo for something else, or there's some other little discrepancies depending on how you want to play the game. But Grew Suppressor, Task Force, 65, Serpent, and then Skeleton Stock. Some people are like, well, why not use these other ones? It's like, well, that's a little excessive. And when you do that, you end up being slower. So to the point where it's like, might as well use like an XM4, which has really good mobility still, right? Like not amazing like it was before, but still pretty good. You might as well use that, right? Because you're going to get better range. So it kind of ends up being like, you don't want to slow down the gun to the point where it ends up performing like a rifle. That's kind of the whole point of an SMG, is still to perform like an SMG. And that brings us to the number 1 right here. And that doesn't necessarily mean this is the number 1 best loadout. I think this is my favorite going to be going forward. Even though the AMAX is a little bit weaker, it's still, I think, the best. If you're a good player, you're going to prefer the AMAX over a lot of the other options out there. But Monolithic, Zodiac, Commando foregrip, 45 round mag, VOK has not changed. And then we also have the MP5, and there's a couple different variations here. I was using this on stream and people were like, well, why are you using sleight of hand? Well, because I was playing quads. Typically I want a little bit faster reload when I'm playing quads. If I was playing trios, I would run collapsible stock over it. If you're running duos, solos, collapsible stock is the way to go. But typically in the other part of it, it's like, well, you need about 10 bullets down to down. Like you'd have to be super accurate. Moving hip fire. I mean, hip fire, this is the hip fire machine. But if you don't hip fire, you may not like the weapon, right? So you still got pretty good hip fire with the 5 milliwatt. Monolithic suppressors in there for obvious reasons. Merc foregrip, 45 round mag. And like I said, you could swap the other one out. And this all ends up being the same. But I'm sure there's a lot of class setups that you're like, what the heck do I use? What's good? So that's what we'll talk about real quickly. So what we're looking at right now is a spreadsheet where I have ranking all the various weapons in their own individual class. Obviously the AMAX, like I said, is still top dog. We got Ram, Krig, M4 is still really good. Growl, there's a lot of good options here, but it also gives you kind of loadouts for those individual weapons as well as TTK compared. So if you want to look at like how much damage you need to do for specific locations, this is already updated as of the different nerfs. You can kind of see what changed in yellow. I was able to update where you can see how it looks at limb. This is for range. We got a couple different options for range. And then if we go a little bit further behind my webcam here, you can see that I have the close range TTK. Akimbo M19s, very disgusting still. AS Val, top dog and solos, ammo keeps it back. You can see a lot of these close range options are pretty solid. MP7, definitely still usable up close. You can see it kills right around as fast as the Bullfrog up close, but the damage drops off a little bit sooner, like around 13 meters. Even if you put on that Force Recon, or what is it? I can't remember the name of the Recon barrel, FSS Recon. You get a little bit better range with the monolithic. So the MP7 can still be back because you can make it as a hipfire build. So it kind of swaps in there, but obviously the MP5 kills a little bit faster. So you got some good options there. If I left something off, you do have a loadout right here. You could find something. These aren't 100% updated as of the update because there's a lot of changes that happen, but for the most part, these class setups will get you by. So if you want to access it, it's a living document near the top of the description where pretty much if you bookmark it, it'll always be there. And as I change something, it literally updates on the spreadsheet to kind of help you out. If you want to try using a weapon that literally no one talks about, there it is for you. So hopefully you guys did enjoy the video, learned something new. If you did, please do me a favor, hit the like button. If you're brand new, want to find your way back, just double check, make sure you subscribe with notifications on. Appreciate all the support. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.